My name's Arthur, and I am a high school teacher for 20 some odd years.
My name is Daisy. I'm currently a student teacher at a local high school.
My name is Rania, a Fresno State alumni and aspiring educator.
My name is Abby. I am a high school student.
Hello, I'm Arturo, a junior at Bullard High School.
Hi, my name is Natalia and I'm a junior at Bullard High School.
Hi, my name is Dexter and I'm a first-year college student at Fresno State. I'm currently a liberal studies major and work at the Head Start program in downtown Fresno and at the Fresno State Dining Hall.
Hi, I'm Hector Lopez, teacher on special assignment. The issue we are addressing at C3E is determining how we can prepare and assist educators to engage in culturally responsive teaching.
At the Center for Creative Community Engagement, we have created a tangible resource for educators to be able to respond to the needs of their students whose communities have been historically marginalized.
Through the Center for Creative Community Collaboration, we collectively shared our experiences with curriculum and instruction. We addressed the whitewashing of curricula in K-12 schools.
The main issue with the whitewashing that occurs every day at school starts at the curriculum and with those that are teaching, interacting, and inspiring students. It is not necessarily the teacher's fault, but them being aware and changing their environment based on the whitewashing that is printed in history books, English books, and other things that students are interacting with every day.
The educational system from K-12 isn't perfect. This is not only due to the curriculum, but the people teaching it. Our goal is to put an end to whitewashing in our system and make school a safer and more culturally responsive place.
As students, teachers, and educators, our lived experiences have shown us a lack of cultural awareness and representation that exists within our education system. This challenge must be addressed by training and by, more importantly, promoting cultural responsive teachers. As properly trained educators, we have the ability to adequately address student culture in our classrooms.
Everyone has a cultural lens. Jenny Muñez gives an excellent definition of it in her writing, Culturally Responsive Teaching. What I took away from her writing is people from all places and backgrounds have a tendency to make bias based on societal influence, whether they are conscious of it or not. Either way, being able to recognize those biases and act on it is a vital step and arguably the first step to take in order to achieve culturally responsive teaching. Being able to understand a person's sensitivity to things like history, values, experiences, etc. help form cultural competency, as well as being able to take those difficult and uncomfortable yet necessary conversations with your students about things regarding race like stereotypes and prejudice is a necessary step to take. I was very immersed in my culture growing up. My grandparents were immigrants from Mexico, so growing up with them, I had a different experience than the average American kid. I grew up speaking Spanish and eating chilaquiles for breakfast rather than the typical American pancakes and bacon. As well as being immersed in my own culture, I was surrounded by all different types. My elementary school had not only kids but staff as well from all different types of cultures. Because of this, we had lots of teachers who understood us. Having a teacher that had an idea and a more in-depth understanding of my home life was very beneficial. They were more patient when I talked about the struggles I had at home than the average American child may have not experienced. Even though it might not be as easy for a teacher of a different culture to accomplish it, it is very possible. To recognize and look past your bias is a crucial part of the educational field to achieve a more culturally responsive classroom.
The competency that I chose was bringing real-world issues into the classroom because it's hard for students to learn the curriculum because they don't have the proper resources, which is understandable because some teachers don't have the funding, but that is exactly why we should bring this to people's attention. It will help the students get a better understanding when they have more options and more hands-on learning opportunities. To bring in real-world issues into a classroom setting requires culturally responsive teachers to address the so what factor by instruction by helping students see how the knowledge and skills they learn in schools are valuable for their lives, such as their families and communities. According to Real America, culturally responsive educators employ lessons and regularly assigned projects that require learners to identify real-world issues they encounter in their daily lives. They do this by connecting classrooms to the real world, Teachers can demonstrate the relevance of subjects and give students a vision of what's possible, providing a meaningful framework for both academic and personal things. According to the article written by Resources for Thinking, making real-world connections promotes students' achievement through the authenticity of the learning and the results of the learning, which are directed to audiences beyond the school. It supports character education as relationships between the community, the school, and the students are more enhanced in the curriculum, leaving them to want to know more. An additional benefit of including many viewpoints and/or different sources is that the students can begin to understand useful information from irrelevant information and compare/contrast competing ideas, leaving them with useful skills that they can use over and over again. Some examples that educators could use is to invite guest speakers to the classroom. Having someone talk about their own personal experiences draws students in to know the authenticity of the issue that they're learning about. Taking students on educational field trips, which could be optional for some schools that don't have the funds to take field trips, but to be in the place where the issues is solved gives a student the true understanding of what is really going on with said issue. It simulates real-life experiences depending on the issue. This could be an excellent way to get students to engage in activities, but also really see what it was really like to work on the said title, and lastly, give students a real tangible problem to solve.
The third competency is to draw on students' cultures to shape curriculum and instruction. This is an approach to schooling that promotes student engagement, learning, and achievement by centering their knowledge, cultural backgrounds, and everyday experiences in the classroom. An example of implementing the third competency in your classroom is creating and designing lessons with community and school staff with specific cultural and community goals as a driver for instruction. CRT educators examine textbooks to determine whether they fail to represent particular groups of people or reinforce stereotypes. To bridge new learning, educators can link student background and experiences to academic lessons. We have to make an effort in reflecting on our own teaching practices and unconscious biases. A policy analyst, Jenny Muniz, with the education policy at New America, provided a resource with self-reflection questions in connection to the 8 competencies of CRT to support teachers. This resource promotes teachers to implement CRT in their classrooms with the goal of empowering all learners. Teachers can validate student identities by implementing practices, instructional materials, promoting mutual respect and cooperation. Intercultural educators implement different learning styles, accommodate students, and celebrate multiculturalism as an asset to a child's learning career.
Throughout my experience in this program, I have come to learn a lot about myself and the educational system that continues to renovate itself. Throughout the C3E project, I began to realize just how prevalent whitewashing is in our curriculum, getting the opportunity to collaboratively come up with new ideas on how to address these unequal distributions of resources towards students of different backgrounds. The issue I would like to discuss with you today is being aware, recognizing the cultural bias that exists within our educational system. I believe that the first step on recognizing and redressing these biases first begins within oneself. Whether it be educators, students, or even administrators, we all tend to have our own set of attitudes or beliefs when entering the workforce. However, it begins to become damaging once these beliefs begin to place limitations on a certain group of people and starts associating and implementing negative stereotypes into the classroom, which is something we see a little too often in classrooms all around America. Moving into a bigger city such as Fresno and working in schools that are targeted for lower income families, I continue to learn just how damaging these biases have been unconsciously implemented in the classroom, such as the readings and multimediums that are chosen for any lesson, not representing or reflecting the diversity of the classroom. As I continue to speak to educators and multiple former students who have attended high schools all across Fresno County, I can't help but notice how due to one's socioeconomical standing and their community, they are often held back from partaking in educational opportunities that their neighboring schools receive. It's no secret that schools that have a dominantly white population of student to staff ratio are the ones receiving the most support and funding for their district, while the schools that are located in certain areas and have a large population of kids of color are often underfunded. But don't take it from me, for according to the data released by the Fresno Economics Opportunities Commission, it states how, quote, systematically we are failing to effectively educate over 60% of Black and Latinx students in our educational system, end of quote. While reading an article published by New America, it summarizes how due to this system, some teachers put the blame on their learners rather than acknowledging this issue that faces a large population of oppressed students, starting the discussion of what exactly we can do in order to redress these biases. The Education Development Center provides educators with ways to begin unwinding years of systematic racism, such as ways to re-examine their curriculum, while reinforming the way discipline is handled in the classroom.
Competency number 5 is modeling high expectations for all students. With that being said, we have to look at never lowering expectations and supporting all students in producing high-level work in the classroom, and that's key if we want to stay true to competency number 5. With that being said, research has shown that if we want to see student growth in the school setting, we first need to have educators adopt the view that all students are capable of academic success. For example, my district colleagues have mentioned that some of the most impactful teachers are the ones that clearly and regularly communicate their belief that all students can master the learning targets and, more so, offer support for students in self-direction. Culturally responsive educators understand that marginalized groups or communities are susceptible to negative stereotypes regarding their intellect or their behavior, therefore can affect student perceptions of themselves. This is why it's critical or crucial to be committed to encouraging students so that they have their belief or their own belief and their capacity to meet their high expectations for success with proper support. Furthermore, as educators can be okay with students adopting out regularly learning in the classroom, thinking if we are going to be lowering expectations, that can also contribute to negative outcomes or transfer students systematically. Additionally, research done by John Hattie and his team points to the effectiveness of teacher collective efficacy and how that contributes to acceleration of student learning. The basis of that is really having a shared belief that through collective action, educators can influence or can have influence over student outcomes and increase student achievement. Nonetheless, it isn't just educators, but also leaders in our school systems that need to lean into modeling high expectations for all students, which is competency number 5 and what it's calling out. In our resources, you can find a few good reads on this topic, from a synthesis of the literature to a book titled Culturally Responsive School Leadership by Dr. Muhammad Khalifa. You can also find prime examples of what modeling high expectations can look like at a school site.
Culturally responsive educators assess how learners from different backgrounds experience the environment and encourage students to reflect on their experiences with bias. Additionally, a caring school community where students feel a sense of belonging is essential to student success. In the Central Valley, a large majority of the student population are children of immigrants. However, the majority of educators in our schools are primarily people whose families have been here for generations. This leads to a disconnect between teachers and their students' realities. Educators are in need of resources to help them model respect for social, cultural, and linguistic differences. Aligned with the importance of diversity and multicultural awareness in education, diversity in and out of the classroom will continue to grow. So it's essential we prepare students to adapt to an evolving world and embrace those different from themselves. Moreover, in order to prepare students to be able to respect others with different cultural backgrounds, educators must take on the responsibility to prepare themselves as well. There are an abundance of resources available for educators to refer to. These resources are available online on websites such as Edutopia and Purdue Global.
The 7th competency is to collaborate with families and the local community. Culturally responsive educators frequently strive for learning more about the local community and families' backgrounds, culture, values, and beliefs. Examples of this competency may look like learning about student traditions, holidays, or other cultural aspects significant to the student's life. Implementing student culture within academic lessons and making connections to students' real experiences builds cultural responsiveness in our classrooms. Ask yourself, have I reduced barriers for families, students' participation? We must be mindful of the families and communities we are working with. As educators, we need to provide the utmost respect towards family cultures and values to develop trust and participation in the student's learning career.
The final competency is to communicate in linguistically and culturally responsive ways. What this means is that culturally responsive teachers seek to understand how culture influences communication, both in verbal and nonverbal ways. I can attest to the importance of being able to understand students' cultural backgrounds and how it impacts the way they communicate and the way they perform in the classroom. As I began my experience in the classroom as a substitute teacher, I was assigned a long-term job for a TK class of 14 children. 2 of the 14 kids only spoke their native language. One of the little girls spoke Punjabi and the other little girl spoke Spanish. Fortunately, I speak Spanish so I could communicate with the Spanish-speaking child, and the para-educator in the classroom spoke Punjabi, so she could communicate with the child that only spoke Punjabi. But I wonder, what if neither one of us happened to be in the classroom? The little girls would have to have an even more difficult time adjusting to school. Or what if there was a child with a native language that neither one of us spoke? In order to effectively teach this child, we would have to become familiar with their cultural ways of communicating. To take on the responsibility of being a responsive teacher means going out of our way to better serve these children in our classrooms. Thankfully, there are resources and organizations that are already doing the heavy lifting. The Language Learning Project has been implemented to provide educators of dual language learners resources to best support these students. A toolkit to implement the Language Learning Project is available for free to download on the LLP website, as well as video trainings for educators. Also, the teacher-created materials has an abundance of resources for educators to reference on how to communicate in linguistically and culturally responsive ways.
The 8 competencies all come back to the simple idea that students of color and in lower income areas aren't receiving the education that they deserve, whether that's because of the lack of effort from the school into those students, the lack of acknowledgement of their culture and background, and the low expectations they are set at. The 8 competencies are focused on addressing those issues to build bridges between students and teachers. It helps to bring those who practice said CRT will know how to engage with the students and form a better learning environment for those who need it. One of the most important yet simple steps to take towards a more inclusive teaching learning environment is to take into account who you are teaching, where you are teaching, and what you are teaching. Using those as a base to ground yourself is how you can achieve a more culturally responsive classroom. An example highlighting the lack of knowledge of teachers on this topic is further proved by a survey on teachers performed by the Metropolitan Center in New York, which was done in the year 2018 for research on equity and transformation of schools. Showed fewer than 1 in 3 teachers had received ongoing professional development of topics such as how to tackle issues of race and ethnicity in the classroom environment. Most of my information was taken from 2 articles. An article done by Jenny Muñez called Culturally Responsive Teaching, a 50-state survey on teaching standards. Another article was done by Honiva Gay called Preparing for Culturally Responsive Teaching. The main idea from this article is based from Gay's book called Culturally Responsive Teaching, Theory, Research, and Practice, which received the 2001 Outstanding Writing Award from the American Association of Colleges for Teacher Education.
Hi, my name is Rohit Mehta, and I'm an assistant professor in the Department of Curriculum and Instruction in the Kremen School of Education and Human Development at Fresno State. I'm also the Equity and Social Justice Faculty Fellow for the academic year 2022-23. As a part of this fellowship, I've tried to create a collaborative creative space for our community members to engage in research and inquiry-based and data-informed approaches to address issues of inequity and injustice in education. The Center for Creative Community Engagement, C3E, is a community-driven and project-based approach to addressing social justice and equity issues through creative collaboration. This center was made possible by the donations to Equity and Social Justice Fellowship organized by the Kremen School of Education and Human Development at California State University, Fresno. The purpose of the center is to become a space for systemically marginalized Black and Brown youth to engage in project-based community problem defining and solving to address social justice issues in their lived experiences. It's also a space for educators, in-service and pre-service teachers, university faculty, committed to justice-oriented social change to engage in pedagogical awareness and approaches that move beyond behavioral disciplining and policing to fostering creativity. It's also space for parents, guardians, and other stakeholders to engage in anti-racist dialogue and culturally sustaining engagement with social justice issues in their lived experiences. It's also a space for community leaders to collaborate on creative solutions to local issues that are not dependent on the state of local politics, but instead focus on offering new alternative spaces for youth to engage in disciplinary knowledge and self-actualization. The first year of this center involved 9 community members who engaged in a creative project to address an issue they agreed on as being a social justice issue relevant to Fresno and Central Valley. The project we collectively engaged in focused on addressing the need for culturally appropriate, relevant, and sustaining pedagogy in schools through curricular, instructional, and policy changes. Our project team settled on using the 8 competencies of culturally responsive teaching based on the work of Dr. Geneva Gay and the report by Jenny Munoz prepared for the education policy organization New America. In this video, we present the 8 competencies reflected through the lived experiences of the members of the larger Fresno community, including its students, parents, and pre-service and in-service teachers. We share definitions, examples, and resources for each of the competencies that could assist educators, parents, and students in better understanding what social justice-oriented education means in our daily lives.